The palace of Varelia shone like a diamond under the twin suns. Tall towers stretched toward the sky, and golden flags fluttered in the warm breeze. It was the day of the great bonding ceremony, a tradition held every 7 years. Princes, warriors, scholars, and leaders from many alien worlds had come to choose a royal Varelian bride. Inside the main hall, lights danced on the crystal walls. Alien guests wore their best clothes. Music played softly in the background. The royal daughters stood proudly in a line at the center of the room, each wearing gowns of glowing silk. The crowd admired them tall, beautiful, and powerful. But at the end of the line, sitting quietly in a sleek silver chair, was Princess Sci-Fi. She had long, shining white hair and pale silver skin that sparkled under the light. Her eyes glowed, softly with a calm, deep light, but she could not stand or walk like her sisters. Born with a rare nerve disorder, Sci-Fi used a hover chair to move. She had never been trained in royal dance or swordplay. She was called gentle by her teachers, quiet by the servants, unfit by the nobles. Her heart beat fast as she watched her sisters step forward, one by one. Each was chosen quickly. The crowd clapped. Joyful music played. Flowers rained down from the ceiling, but when it was Sci-Fi's turn, silence filled the hall. She looked around, smiling gently, trying to be hopeful. No one moved. Some guests turned away. Others whispered behind their hands, "That one, she cannot even stand. Her beauty is wasted. Such a shame." Why did they let her join the ceremony? Sci-Fi heard it all. She had heard it for years. But this time, the pain felt sharper. She'd waited her whole life for this moment, hoping someone would see her as more than her chair, as more than her condition. Minutes passed. Still no one came forward. The high speaker, an elder with gold robes and long antennae, cleared his throat. "The final princess remains unchosen," he said. His voice was heavy with sadness. "The bonding ceremony is now complete." Sci-Fi bowed her head. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. Royal daughters did not cry in public. She turned her hover chair slowly, ready to leave the stage. That's when something unexpected happened. A voice spoke. Clear, calm, and kind. "Wait." The crowd turned toward the back of the hall. A human stepped forward. He wore a simple gray suit. His dark brown hair was a little messy, and he walked with a relaxed but confident stride. He wasn't tall or powerful like the other suitors. He didn't wear shining armor or carry glowing staffs. His name was Eli Grant. He had been invited as a guest, not a suitor. Months ago, Eli had saved a Varelian diplomat during a ship malfunction. As a thank you, the royal family gave him an honorary place at the bonding ceremony. No one expected him to take part, but there he was, walking toward Princess Sci-Fi with calm steps. People whispered again, "A human? Is this a joke?" "Doesn't belong here." Eli ignored the whispers. He stopped in front of Sci's hover chair and looked into her glowing eyes. He smiled. Sci looked back, confused. Then Eli knelt down on one knee, and he gently asked, "Will you bond with me?" The entire room went silent. Even the music stopped. The queen gasped. The nobles stared in shock. The high speaker dropped his scroll. Sci blinked. You wish to bond with me?" she asked softly, unsure if she had heard right. Eli nodded. "Yes, I saw you sitting alone. You looked like the only person in this whole room who was real." Sci felt her hands tremble. Spoken to her like that, not even her tutors, not her sisters, not even her mother. "Why?" she whispered. "I'm not strong. I can't dance." Eli shook his head. "You don't need to be anything but you. You're more than enough." Tears touched the edge of her eyes again. This time she didn't blink them away. The high speaker cleared his throat loudly. "This is highly irregular. You are not of noble blood. You're not an approved suitor." "I didn't come here to win a prize," Eli said, standing. "I came here because I believe people deserve to be seen. She deserves better than being ignored." The queen stood. Her face was tight with emotion. "You must understand," she said, her voice calm but cold. She is my daughter. Her future cannot be decided so easily. Sarai finally spoke clearly. Mother, please, let me speak. The queen nodded slowly. Sarai turned her chair to face the crowd. She raised her head high. For years, she began, I have been called the broken one, the quiet one, the one who must stay behind. I came to this ceremony with hope, but not with much faith. She looked at Eli. But this human saw me, not my chair, not my weakness, me. She turned back to the crowd, and I accept him. Gasps echoed again. The queen covered her mouth. Her eyes were wide with surprise. The high speaker looked unsure. Such a bond must be reviewed by the council. This ... cannot be rushed. Then review it, Sarai said. But I have made my choice. Eli smiled gently. We can wait. The queen slowly walked down from her throne. She came to her daughter, eyes wet with tears. For the first time in years, she knelt beside Sarai. I am proud of you, she whispered. I forgot that courage does not always look like swords and strength. Sarai reached out and touched her mother's hand. That evening, the celebration ended quietly. The nobles left confused, angry, or thoughtful. The news of the human and the forgotten princess spread across the stars. Some called it madness. Others called it hope. In a quiet room of the palace, Sarai and Eli sat together. They didn't talk much. They just sat in silence, sharing stories, smiles. And the start of something new. For the first time in her life, Sarai felt chosen. The stars outside the royal palace of Varelia shone like tiny candles in the night sky. Inside, whispers still floated through the long halls and glowing corridors. Servants talked. Nobles muttered. The name Eli Grant, a human, was on everyone's lips. How could she choose him? He's not even Varelian, just a mechanic, not a warrior or royal. But Princess Sira didn't care. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her, not her chair, not her weakness, but her. She still felt the warmth of Eli's words in her chest, like a quiet fire that refused to go out. That night, Sarai sat in her private garden, surrounded by soft light from glowing plants. Her hover chair hummed gently as it floated beside a silver-blue stream. Above her, glowing butterflies danced in the moonlight. She wasn't alone. Eli sat on the grass nearby, leaning back on his arms. He looked up at the stars, completely relaxed. As if he belonged there, Ivan, though he didn't. You really shocked them, Sarai said softly, breaking the silence. Eli chuckled. Yeah. I don't think they were expecting a human to ask for a princess, especially you. Sarai raised an eyebrow. Especially me? I mean, he said quickly, sitting up straighter, not in a bad way. Just. Everyone else acted like you were invisible. That made no sense to me. She looked away, her voice low. It made sense to them. There was a pause. Then Eli asked, Do you want to talk about it? Sarai took a deep breath. The night air was cool and soft. I was born early. My body didn't grow the same as others. The doctors tried everything, machines, medicines, even gene pulses, but nothing worked. My legs never gained full control. She touched the side of her hover chair gently. I was supposed to be hidden away, she continued, but my father refused. He said I had a voice, and it should be heard. Still, most of the court sees me as ... weak, unworthy. Eli leaned forward, but that's not true. She looked at him, surprised. I've worked with machines most of my life, he said. Some were loud and shiny, all sparks and fire. Others were quiet and steady, barely made a sound, but those quiet ones, they were the most reliable, the strongest inside. Sarai didn't know what to say. No one had ever compared her to something strong. She usually heard words like fragile or delicate. You think I'm like a machine? She asked, half-dashed smiling. Eli laughed. No, I think you're like a starship with a silent engine, powerful. But everyone's too busy looking. At the fireworks to notice, Sarai laughed too. Felt strange. Good, light. I've never heard anyone describe me like that. Then they've all been blind. Their eyes met for a moment. No royal laws. No duties. Just two people talking. Suddenly a shadow appeared in the garden. It was Lady Venari, one of the Queen's closest advisors. Her dark robes shimmered in the light, and her face was stern. "Princess," she said, bowing slightly, "the High Council has called an emergency meeting. They will decide whether this bond can move forward." Sarai's smile faded. "Tonight?" she asked. "In the morning? Must be ready." Eli stood. "Can I attend?" Venari looked at him like he was dirt. "You may sit in the chamber. You may not speak." "Of course," he said calmly. Venari turned to Sarai again. "I advise you to prepare carefully. The council will not be kind." Sarai gave a small nod, and the advisor left. Eli looked at her. "They're going to try to stop this, aren't they?" She nodded. "They will say I was emotional, that you tricked me, that I'm not thinking clearly. Then let's prove them wrong." The next morning, the High Council chamber was packed. 12 council members sat in a half-circle of floating seats, their long robes flowing. Nobles filled the balconies, whispering and watching. Even a few visitors from off-world were allowed to observe. Princess Sarai entered, floating in her hover chair, head high and face calm. Eli followed, wearing clean clothes and simple boots. He looked around, feeling the pressure in every stare. The Queen sat silently at the center, her hands folded. She looked tired. The head of the council, Elder Cryan, began to speak. "Princess Sarai of House Varelia," he said, "do you confirm that you accepted the bond request of this human?" "I do," Sarai said clearly. "Why?" Cryan asked. Sarai didn't hesitate because he saw me. He spoke to me as a person. He didn't see my chair, my condition, or my status. He saw my heart. Some nobles murmured. Cryan raised a hand. "Your Highness, this is not a story of feelings. This is a matter of future rule, of royal strength." Another council member, a thin female with sharp eyes, added, "And what of the human? What does he offer the royal line?" Eli spoke without being asked. "I offer nothing but myself, not a warrior or a noble. I'm a man who saw someone, heard Ingen wanted to say she matters." The chamber fell silent again. "You were told not to speak," Cryan said coldly. "Then punish me," Eli replied. "But I won't sit here and be quiet while people talk about her like she's a thing. Not a person." Sarai smiled faintly. The Queen finally stood. "Enough," she said softly but firmly. Everyone turned to her. "I watched my daughter be passed over like she was invisible," the Queen said, "and I saw her speak with more courage than anyone. In this room, I do not care for his bloodline or his rank. I care that he made her feel seen for the first time in years." She turned to the council. "Let them prove their bond, not with blood, but with heart." Cryan frowned. "Then we suggest the trial of worthiness. If the human can pass, we will approve the bond." The nobles gasped. "That trial is meant for warriors. He'll never survive it." Sarai looked at Eli, fear in her eyes. But Eli just nodded. "Tell me what I have to do." That evening, Sarai sat with him again in the garden. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "It's dangerous." He touched her hand gently. "If I walk away now, they win. And you lose everything. I won't let that happen." Her fingers squeezed his. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her. Hand was ready to fight for her. The stars above were bright and endless. Tomorrow would bring trials, but tonight. The sun rose early on Varelia, lighting the palace with golden light. But the day was not peaceful. Across the royal grounds, crowds gathered, talking in hushed voices. The trial of worthiness was about to begin, and everyone knew the one who dared to face. It was not a royal, not a warrior, not even Verlaine. It was a human. Eli Grant stood in the middle of the sacred training grounds. The floor was made of stone with ancient carvings that glowed faintly. Around the circle, nobles, officials, and citizens filled the stands. Some looked curious, others looked angry. A few looked hopeful. Princess Sarai sat at the royal viewing. Arya, her hover chair still, her eyes locked on Eli. She had begged the council to stop the trial. She had told them it was unfair, but they refused. If he truly wishes to bond with a royal, Elder Creon had said, he must show he is worthy. Not just in words, but in action. Now the trial would begin. A tall warrior stepped forward from the edge of the ring. His armor was dark blue, and his eyes glowed with cyber enhancements. He was the trial master, known as Tavrik. He looked at Eli and said, "There are 3 parts to this trial: strength, wisdom, heart. You may quit at any time, but then the council will deny your bond request forever." Eli nodded. "I understand." The trial master raised his arm. "Then let it begin." The first trial, strength. A huge door opened, and a large, heavy beast came forward. It was not real, but a training machine, shaped like a charging animal, covered in armor. Its task was simple: knock Eli down. The crowd laughed. "He's going to be crushed." Eli didn't wear armor. He didn't even have a weapon, just boots, gloves, and a determined look. The beast charged. Eli ran not toward it, but to the side. He dodged once, twice. The machine was fast, but heavy. Eli rolled, ducked, and used the edge of the arena to leap over it. The crowd gasped. He didn't fight like a Varelian. He fought like a human. Smart, fast, clever. After 10 long minutes, the beast ran into a pillar and stopped. Eli stood behind it, panting. The first trial was over. He had passed. The second trial. Wisdom. The next trial took place in a quiet chamber filled with glowing puzzles. The task was to solve the path of lights, a mental challenge designed to test memory, logic, and focus. Eli stared at the lights, confused at first. "They want me to what?" Princess Sarai watched from above. Her hands were tight on the arms of her chair. She remembered how her tutors used to test her with similar puzzles. Trying to break her calm, Eli took a deep breath. Instead of rushing, he sat down, crossed his legs, closed his eyes. The council murmured, "What is he doing? Is he giving up?" But then, one by one, the lights began to blink in the correct order. He had solved the puzzle in his mind first, then acted. Sarai smiled. "He doesn't move like them," she whispered. "He thinks like himself." When Eli completed the final light pattern, the room went dark. It lit up in soft green. He had passed the second trial. The third trial. Heart. This trial was the most personal. It didn't use machines. It didn't test the mind. It tested the soul. Trial Master Tavrik walked into the arena with a crystal box. Inside it was a stone called the Burden of Truth. It was not heavy in weight, but heavy in meaning. The final trial, Tavrik said, is to carry a burden. One that the princess herself carries every day. The box opened, and from the shadows, Sarai's hovered chair floated forward. The crowd went completely silent. Sarai stared in shock. Tavrik spoke again. "You must carry her through the court, past the judging nobles, past their eyes and their judgment, not to shame her, but to honor her. This is the final test. Do you still choose to bond with her?" Eli didn't speak. He walked forward. He knelt down, and he gently held out his arms. "May I?" he asked her. Sarai, surprised, nodded. "You may." Lifted her slowly, carefully, like she was something precious. Wasn't light, but he didn't tremble. He didn't rush. Simply walked. The path was long. Nobles watched with cold expressions. Some whispered insults. Others stared in silence. But Eli never looked away from Sarai. He carried her with pride. When they reached the end, he placed her back in the hover chair and stepped back. He said only 4 words. "She is my choice." The council's judgment, the 12 council members whispered among themselves. Some were angry. Some were confused. Then Elder Creon stood. "By tradition, the trials are past," he said, his voice cold, "but he is still human." One councilwoman added, "Not of our blood," said another. Then the queen stood, her voice louder than all, "And yet he has more heart than any noble here. He saw my daughter's worth when all of you turned your eyes away. I do not care for his species. I care for his soul." She turned to Eli. "You have proven your worth not through power, but through respect." The crowd was quiet then, slowly. One noble stood, then another, then more, and then the room filled with slow, respectful claps. Princess Sarai looked around, shocked. For the first time, people weren't looking away. They were looking at her, truly seeing her. Later that night, Sarai and Eli sat in the garden again. The stars above were quiet and peaceful. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Eli said softly. "We did it." She looked at him, then reached out and took his hand. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel broken. She felt whole, not because he saved her, but because he walked beside her. The palace of Aurelia, once filled with quiet whispers, was now buzzing like a starship's engines before launch. News of the human Eli Grant passing the trial of worthiness with Princess Sarai spread like wildfire through every hall, every market, and every starship dock. But not everyone was happy. In the Grand Council room, nobles and leaders gathered in tight circles. Some wore frowns. Others clenched fists. "This cannot be," growled Lord Varel, a powerful nobleman with sharp eyes and a thick voice. "Human, a mechanic, no less should never bond with the Princess of Aurelia." "Exactly," said Lady Venari, the Queen's advisor. "This scandal will shake the foundations of our society. The Council must act." Meanwhile, in the royal gardens, Sarai sat quietly, her hover chair glowing softly under the moonlight. Eli was beside her, holding her hand. Despite the noise outside, the garden felt like a safe world where nothing could hurt them. But the palace was far from safe. The Queen's decision, the Queen summoned Sarai and Eli to the throne room. Her face was calm but serious. "Sarai," she said, "you have shown courage, but the council is divided. Many refuse to accept this bond." Sarai looked at her mother. "Then what will happen to us?" The Queen sighed. "I will support you. Both. But tradition is strong. To prove your bond is real, you must face the final vote of the High Council." Eli nodded. "Whatever it takes." The Queen smiled faintly. "Good. You will not be alone." The High Council meeting days later. The High Council gathered in their shining chamber. Sarai and Eli stood before them, the palace's great crystal windows shining behind them. Elder Cryon, still wary but respectful, spoke first. "We must consider the traditions that have held Varelia for thousands of years. The bond of a princess is not just personal, it is political. The future of our world depends on it." Lady Venari's voice cut sharply. "This human's presence threatens to tear our society apart." Eli stepped forward. "I am not here to destroy your traditions. I want to build bridges between your people and mine." Sarai added softly, "I have found strength in Eli's kindness. And together, we can change how our people see disability and difference." The council murmured. Some nodded. Others shook their heads. The vote began. Each council member rose. "To speak? Is this bond worthy of our future?" one asked. "Can a human truly protect Varelia?" Another demanded, after long hours. The votes were counted. The result was close. The bond was approved, but with one condition. The condition? The council declared that Eli and Sarai must live apart for one full Varelian year before their bond could be fully recognized. This time was to allow the people to adjust, to test if their connection would survive distance and pressure. Sarai's heart sank. "Live apart?" she asked. Eli squeezed her hand. "We can do this. It's not forever." Queen nodded. "It is a test of patience and trust." A year apart, the days turned to weeks. The weeks 2 months, Ciri stayed in the palace, working quietly with her people. She began speaking to disabled children, encouraging them to believe in themselves. Her voice, once soft and unsure, grew stronger. Eli returned to his ship, working. As a mechanic, but always thinking of Sarai, he sent messages and gifts, small trinkets, drawings of stars and stories from Earth. Though apart, their bond grew deeper. Challenges and hope, not everyone was kind. Some nobles whispered behind closed doors. Others sent spies to watch Eli. One night, a shadowy figure approached Eli's ship. But before harm could come, Eli's quick mind and human instincts helped him escape. Back in the palace, Sarai heard of the attack. She felt fear, but also fierce protection. She sent a message to the queen. If they harm him, they harm me. The queen replied, "We will protect you both." The bond grows stronger as the year passed. Stories of the human and the disabled princess spread across the galaxy. Many were inspired. People began to question old laws. Disabled citizens found new hope. Aliens from distant worlds saw that strength. Came in many forms. At last the year ended. The reunion in the palace's grand hall. Sarai waited nervously. The doors opened. Eli entered. Carrying a single glowing flower, a symbol of their bond, they looked at each other and smiled. "No matter the distance," Eli said, "I never stopped choosing you." Sarai reached for his hand, "And I never stopped believing." The council watched quietly, moved by the strength of their love. A new beginning. The bond was complete. Eli and Sarai stood side by side, ready to face whatever the future held. They had changed their world not just with power, but with courage, kindness, and faith. And for the first time in Varelia's long history, love had rewritten the rules. The great hall of Varelia's palace was filled with light. It was the day of the final bonding ceremony, a day many had waited for. A day some had doubted would come. Princess Sarai sat in her hover chair, dressed in a flowing gown that shimmered like starlight. Her silver skin glowed softly under the chandeliers. Her eyes were bright, filled with hope and quiet strength. Beside her stood Eli Grant, the human who had dared to ask a simple question that changed everything. "Will you bond with me?" The crowd watched in silence, their faces a mix of awe, respect, and curiosity. Nobles whispered quietly, some nodding slowly. The High Council elders stood solemn, their eyes on the pair. The queen sat proudly on her throne, a small smile touching her lips. "The ceremony begins." Zelder Cryon, the head of the council, stepped forward. His voice echoed softly in the hall. "Today, we witness a bond unlike any other in Varelia's history. A bond born not from power, wealth, or tradition, but from understanding and courage." He gestured to Sarai and Eli. "By ancient law, bond is sealed when both parties place their hands upon the crystal of unity." A glowing crystal floated between them, shimmering with soft blue light. Sarai reached out, her hand trembling slightly. Eli took hers gently. As their fingers touched the crystal, a warm light spread through the room. It was not just light, it was a feeling of connection, of hope, of new beginnings. The crowd gasped softly. The light grew stronger, shining. From their joined hands and filling every corner of the hall, a new hope when the light faded. Sarai and Eli looked at each other, smiles wide and real. "Together," Eli said, "we will show the galaxy that true strength comes from the heart." Sarai nodded. "That difference is not weakness, but a new kind of power." The queen rose, her voice steady. "Let this day be remembered as the day Varelia opened its heart." Applause filled the hall, changing traditions over the following months. Life on Varelia began to change. The old rules that once kept people apart started to fall away. New laws were passed to protect and include those with disabilities. Schools taught kindness and understanding. The palace opened its doors. To citizens who once were ignored, Sarai became a leader for many who had no voice. She traveled to distant worlds, sharing her story and teaching hope. Eli worked alongside her, designing new technologies that helped people move, work, and live better. Together, they built a future no one had dreamed possible. Challenges ahead, not all welcomed change. Some nobles still whispered in shadowed halls. Some feared losing their power. But Sarai and Eli faced every challenge with calm and courage. When threats came, whether words or worse, they stood united. The people of Varelia saw their love and strength and grew stronger themselves. A quiet moment one evening, far from the palace, Sarai and Eli sat beneath the stars. Eli held Sarai's hand gently. "Do you ever think about how it all began?" he asked softly. Sarai smiled. "I was invisible to the world. Then you asked me a question. Will you bond with me?" "Yes," she said, and that question changed everything. They looked at the stars, peaceful and full of dreams. The future is bright. The galaxy watched as Virilia blossomed into a place of hope and courage. Sarai and Eli were not just a princess and a human. They were a symbol of what happens when people choose kindness over fear, courage over doubt. They had shown that love could rewrite the stars,